I just finished talking with a few of my colleagues on all the different myths that are floating out there about Maranatha. And if you watch, you'll find out, how does Maranatha receive funding for all the projects that we do? And how does Maranatha pick where we work? And is it true that volunteer labor is bad labor? Find out the answers to this and more. Hi everybody, my name's Julie Lee and I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Maranatha. And today I have three special guests with us for this podcast, my fellow Vice Presidents. I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves. So we'll start with you.
My name's Kyle Feast and I'm the Vice President of Projects.
My name is Karen Godfrey and I'm the Vice President of Advancement.
And I'm Kenneth Weiss, Chief Operating Officer here at Maranatha. What a
All
privilege.
right.
Thanks, Julie, for having us.
Four vice presidents on one podcast. Well, what's the occasion?
Yeah, we should be able to answer every question.
Well,
right?
today what we're focused on is breaking down all the misconceptions and misinformation about Maranatha, and we're appropriately calling it Mythbusters. And it's part one of a two-part series. And today's program is going to focus on clearing up myths about Maranatha, the organization in general, and who better to do that with us than my colleagues, our top administrators of the organization. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. You guys ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So first myth, we just kind of compiled a bunch of myths, our team, of different things that we hear. But first myth, is Maranatha an entity of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Who wants to grab that one? Kenneth?
Boy, you better assign it. Yeah, because
Kenneth,
we
all right,
better all
I'm
be
calling
able to
on
answer
Kenneth,
that.
even though your hand wasn't raised.
Okay. The short answer is Maranatha is not an entity of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in any which way. It's not a legal entity that is tied to the church. It is not an entity that answers to the church. However, it is an entity that works very, very closely with the church. We have a large proportion of our volunteers that are members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the bulk majority of our projects are built for, with, in conjunction, Seventh-day Adventist Church.
So we're definitely a Seventh-day Adventist organization, but we're just not legally tied to the Adventist Church.
Yeah.
So I know that for those who are listening who may not know this term, we're frequently called within the church world church as a supporting or independent ministry. Can you explain what that means, Kenneth, again?
Oh goodness. Well, I'm gonna pass it around here too. So, supporting ministry has some connotations that says, okay, this organization exists to support the work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We often like to modify that a little bit also, and we call it a responsive ministry, because really just at the very basic fundamental level, we exist to respond and to answer needs that the church gives to us. So we don't have a specific agenda that says, oh, we are touting this process, or we are touting this type of book, or this type of education, or this philosophy. It's not us. We respond to very specific needs. And Kyle can talk about what are some of those needs, right, that we would respond to.
Yeah.
So the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the way that it's structured around the world, is set up in a way that they don't have within the structure a system for constructing buildings, either schools or churches. It's usually left to the local level. It's usually left up at from a church perspective, it's left up to the congregation. And there's many parts of the world where the congregations don't have the means to be able to build a structure for themselves. And so Maranatha has filled that niche as a supporting ministry for many, many years by seeing that there are needs for construction in its churches and schools. And then in tandem or in concert with the leadership of the church in many different parts of the world, we are able to bring funds to the table to be able to build some of those churches and schools. So we build churches here in the United States. We build churches in developing parts of the world. All of those things are done in an attempt to support those local needs, but it's done. It's filling a need it's filling a capacity that doesn't exist within the structure. So we build churches, we build schools, we sometimes build clinics. We've built houses in the past for particularly after disasters. More so building churches, schools, and then we also do a lot of water wells.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing that in the last 10 years or so.
So Julie, just, I've thought about in the past, how do some of these myths even come about, right? Or this idea, misconception of Maranatha being part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in a very integral way. Here's how that happens. When, let's say we build a school in the Dominican Republic. Well, we have many, many meetings with church leadership, and we appear at events, and church leadership is there with us. And then we also say, hey, we are building a Seventh-day Adventist school. And so all of a sudden, there's a lot of common language, common meetings and direction, and they're very involved. And then there'll be a dedication, and then the leadership of the church accepts this gift from Maranatha. And then the operation of that school continues. And it is a Seventh-day Adventist school at that point.
Everything the context in which we exist is totally Seventh-day Adventist, including the people who work here. Mm-hmm. But I think perhaps the thing that everybody assumes then, along with that, is that we receive funding from the church, right? So Karen, I don't know if you want to talk about that. Do we receive funding? So, myth number 2, we receive funding from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, aka tithe dollars.
Okay.
True or false?
That is false.
Okay.
However, when we go into a country, we meet with the leadership and we try to gauge through the meetings and interactions with them what they can contribute to their own church. Sure. Whether it's the local congregation or the conference, but that's just contributing maybe a little bit. Sometimes it's just labor. Sometimes it's just land. But in general, we try to figure out how they can participate. But no, Maranatha is not out there collecting tithe. Yeah,
we're not getting regular money from the general conference.
That's correct.
Yeah. No, in fact, it's even more than that. This dates this program a little bit, but if you were to go to Maranatha's website, explore.maranatha.org, and you were to look at the stats, you could go country by country and you could see how many buildings, churches, schools, wells have been done, most again for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So if you added up the world total in our history, it's about 15 million square feet. Now, what is that? Well, that's a lot of Costco's stacked together, or that is a lot of Empire State Buildings stacked one on top of each other. So you pick a dollar amount for how much you could build per square foot. So even at $100 a square foot, you're talking $1.5 billion worth of value that's been given to the church, and that's been raised from donors. It's not that it's come from the church.
So we're not receiving money from the church, but we are giving to the church, and we're happy to do that. That's our mission.
That's our ministry. The assets that we are giving are substantial.
Mm-hmm. Another myth that we have too, of course, is, and this has been something that's been mentioned probably with more relevance in the last couple of years, is the idea of government funding. Do we receive government funding for our programs or our buildings?
We do not.
We do not.
So if I was to go back into the history a little bit, Kyle mentioned some homes that were built after disaster. I mean, this was like in the early 80s, the late 70s, when we had some disasters. We actually built homes, and the money from that came from the German government. And so that was a one-time thing, and I'm not even sure it came through Maranatha. It may have come through, other entities just to get the materials. But anyway, it's in general, Maranatha, no, is not accepting government funding, and we don't go out and look for grants at this point, although there are times when we have contemplated doing that, especially for our water well program, because it is a very humanitarian aspect of what we do.
And our water wells are the one thing that truly do serve everybody, not just specific to the Adventist Church, because we try to make it a point that if you have a water well that we've drilled, that we ask that community to make it available to everyone. That's still correct, right?
If you're asking that as a question, 100%. Yeah.
I mean, I know the answer.
Yeah.
But,
the water wells are a good example of something that, perhaps Maranatha can consider government funding because it is for the community, is not. Often government funding is restricted. It can't go to benefit a specific religion or something like that. And that's not the case. Our schools also are not restrictive. In fact, most of the schools, the majority of the students are from the community. They're not specifically Seventh-day Adventist students. So,
that is something I talk a lot about to my friends, and the differences I see between our Adventist schools in the United States and the schools that we visit and help overseas is the kind of the diversity of faith within those schools, and the fact that several of them that I go to, the majority are not even part of the Adventist faith, but some of them do, of course, choose to be baptized into the church. So it's truly a tool for evangelism.
So an important maybe corollary or tangential question that maybe you're getting to is, why would we work so closely with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, right? So if you step away and just say, okay, you build a building, but who's going to use it and manage it and operate it and maintain it into the future? We don't retain ownership, so we don't want to be operating all these school campuses around the world. That's not that's not in our wheelhouse, right? So the Seventh-day Adventist Church has been, for us, an ideal partner to actually run and operate them. Because of that close relationship, we can also check on them. We can ensure that there's teachers there, that there's curriculum, that they're accredited schools, right? And so it helps us get to the end goal of helping other people much more effectively by having that close partnership.
And I mean, you touched upon a good point that I'll point to Kyle now, and this is not a myth, but perhaps things that people do not understand. We put in quite a bit of homework or work before we even enter a country for the very reason that Kenneth's talking about, which is understanding the infrastructure, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
We need to understand, if we're going to be successful, we need to understand what the parameters are and what the landscape is like. And so definitely we put a lot of homework into that. And we want to understand if the church wants us there. We want to understand if it's a good place for potential volunteer involvement. We want to understand whether donors might respond to the needs in that particular area. We've gone into some places and there just wasn't an appetite for it from donors and from volunteers for whatever reason. So we try to sleuth all that out ahead of time and try to understand also about the types of buildings that we typically build. Is it appropriate there? Will it be a good solution to the needs that are there? So yes, we try to really do our homework ahead of time so that we can be successful when we do go into a place.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with the questions because I think Kenneth and Kyle, you do a lot of those types of trips. We are really looking at also what's the population? What is a school going to still be needed 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because certainly our buildings last decades and decades. And you think through everything before we make a huge investment for that.
And one of the things that's really important is you touched on it, the long-term success of that investment. So we have to make sure that it's going to be run well. We have to make sure that there is, like you said, a market for the services that are going to be provided by that. Let's say it's a school. We need to make sure that that school is located in a good place so that they're, in 3-4 years, they decide to shut it down because there's no need for a school in that area. Well, that's not good. So we go through a lot of due diligence ahead of time. We put them through a lot of questions to try to make sure that not only is the environment good for what we plan to build, but are they committed to the long-term success of that building?
To running the school,
absolutely,
the school or church,
to that entity. And it's difficult to sometimes pin that down because church leadership changes. They change frequently. And so you might end up, and this has happened to us many times, you make an agreement with a set of leaders that you think is completely solid in their commitment to this project, and then by the time we actually start construction, leadership has changed. So that happens. So we try to plan for that also and try to mitigate that as much as possible. But yes, we have to make sure that we have done everything possible to make sure that this is going to be a successful project, whether it's a church, a school, water wells, whatever it might be. It needs to be successful for the long term.
And it's an organizational expectation, and it's also something that our donors over the years have come to expect. Every project needs to be successful for as long as possible, right? And nothing will dry up in nonprofits funding as if, the project that people have given to doesn't work, right? And so in a sense, it's a high bar for us, and that's a little bit what makes us successful and unique and very focused on that, because we want those projects to do well, right? And that includes the churches, the schools, and now we have pretty strong focus on wells, because in many places, you build a well and they wear out and the parts wear out. So here you can see the corporate philosophy coming in. Kyle and the team created a well maintenance program like none other in the world. We go back, we fix those wells, and we keep them maintained. And that's very, very rare, right?
And it's
on
a
the
lot
planet
of work.
right
It's
now.
a lot of work, but we
It's a
find
lot
that
of
it's a
work.
non-negotiable.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that you have said throughout the last, 10 minutes that are actually myths that I kind of want to touch on. And one of them, you were talking about it, you called us a responsive organization. And you also mentioned this too. The myth, Maranatha picks where we work. Who wants to tackle that one?
Well,
I'll look at you, Kyle.
Yeah, I'll start. We get calls almost weekly and sometimes multiple times a week from different people or entities that are asking for buildings. I got one this morning right before I came in to do this. And that particular call was about us building a school in Kenya. We get, just weekly, we get calls for somebody who has an absolute important need, and they're sure that we can help with that need. Well, all of the needs that are presented to us are important. I've never really heard one that I wouldn't say is a valid need. But for Maranatha to be able to respond to needs in a systematic, responsible way, we respond to all of them the same way. And that is, we need to get that request from the leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so what we do is we work at different levels of the church. We start with at the general conference level. We have relationships with different people there that help to guide us as to where the church leadership there thinks that we should be active. We then work at the division level to make sure that if a division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is a regional organizational structure, if they contact us and say, we'd like Maranatha to help in our division, then we sit down with them and we ask them to guide us as to where within their division is their priority, where do they think that we can be of the most use. So there's a division called the East Central Africa Division. They contacted us a number of years ago, and they said, we'd like you to start helping us in Kenya. And that is a place that we started working around 2016. And so we've been there 10 years now, and we haven't left. But we have continued to talk to the division and say, do you still want us in Kenya, or do you want us to be somewhere else? And up to this point, they've wanted us to stay working in Kenya.
I mean, there's never an instance where we go and we knock on the door of some division or conference and say, hey, do you want us to come over? Yeah, I mean, we don't, right? We don't do that.
No, occasionally we'll hear about a need, and we might approach particularly a place that we have a relationship with and say, hey, we've received this request, but it's not something we're going to act on without your involvement. And so are you interested in this, in us helping with this? That happens. But by and large, from the division level, then it goes down to the union level, and we sit with those leaders and we say, okay, which conferences do you want us to work with? And then we sit down at the conference level, and that's where they actually bring the actual properties the list of locations, and they say, this is where we've got a congregation here, we need a well there, we need a school over here. And that's where then we start getting down to brass tacks and we start working.
Yeah, you raise a related issue, and in your question, Julie, does Maranatha pick the project, right? That's your question. And in a sense we do, in a sense we don't, right? We try as an organization, as a board, and in conjunction with those people asking us, does the mission of the organization follow and chase the dollars? I would say no. We try to guide the dollars to follow the mission. Mm-hmm. And so there are many times that there's an area of just dire need. There are parts in Africa, Latin America, and Asia that need hundreds or thousands of buildings, but the financial support doesn't come. And so we are in a position, unfortunately, that's the hardest part in many times of our job, is say, look, not at this time. It's just not coming together. Or maybe there are areas that are not safe for volunteers to go. There's a definite need, and there might even be funding, but we try those projects. We do a few of them, but most of our projects, we want volunteers to be able to go. So we do pick them, but it's based on what's happening.
And it's based on what's been presented to you, right? I mean, we have enough requests that come to us that we don't need to go begging, looking for things.
Absolutely.
And I'm always impressed with how in our management meetings, at certain times of the year after you've had a major meeting at the general conference, you come back with a list of places that you feel that you've received requests from, but then you work with the top leadership to prioritize. They tell us what the priorities are so that we're never overstepping. We're really working in tandem with what they need and they're saying, because there's things that we may not know about what a priority is in a country. Yeah. And we respect that. We respect that we thought it was this, but the conference or the division or whatever level we're union, they're telling us, no, actually, this church is the preference or the priority.
And what happens many times is you have a situation where you built, say, 50, 100, or 200 buildings, churches and schools and so on. Well, they have to be staffed and managed, and you need to put leadership in place and coordination in place to make it work. And so we can actually overbuild for them, and they're not quite ready. And that's why it's important to have that dialogue.
And the other thing is that if we just were out doing what we wanted to do, where we thought volunteers might want to go, or where I want to go, whatever.
Where do you want to go? I'm just kidding. We'll ask that later.
Then the local leadership, who actually is responsible for the long-term success of this thing, isn't going to be vested in the project. It needs to be their project from the beginning.
Exactly.
And we need to be responding to what they think that their priorities are, not what we think their priorities are. And that kind of respect, I mean, we have seen over and over how we have good working relationships with leaders all around the world, because we don't come in and say, this is what you need and we're going to do this whether you like it or not. No, we're there to serve, and we're there to help them be successful and to basically, through infrastructure, help to grow their capacity to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we come in and we say, how can we help you? And that engenders a working relationship that's really, really good. And so we are very fortunate to be able to work really closely with the leadership, and they want us to help them, because we're not coming in and telling them, either how to do their job, or we're not dropping buildings where it becomes a liability for them. So,
another myth that we have is that Maranatha, as a short-term mission trip organization, that we do evangelism campaigns. Karen, do you want to tackle that one?
I can tackle this one. So we have done them in the past. So there will be an example. We give opportunities to our volunteer teams to do outreach. Some will choose a vacation Bible school. Some will choose medical. Some may choose to do evangelistic outreach at the churches that they're building. Those are generally driven by the group leader, and depending on the type of skills that they have. Many years ago, I would say now, it was at the turn of the century, We were doing large
Wow,
events.
wow. We've been around for 1,000 years.
So at least 26 years ago.
Yep.
Anyway, we were doing really large evangelistic efforts in India, but things changed in India, and we're no longer doing those. So
would you say that was one of the rare ones where we actually, us as an organization, were coordinating that as part of the volunteer experience? Because I've been with Maranatha for a total of maybe 17, 18 years, and I don't recall any other country where we were implementing that even 20 years ago, except in India.
That was the only location, at least in my time here, that I'm remembering that we did anything like that. And even the volunteer groups, some of them did construction that went, but a lot of them chose to focus just on village visitation and evangelism and just interaction with the people. So we had all kinds of volunteers that did all kinds of outreach things, and it was a really great experience for people during that time period. And we had really, really large numbers of people coming out for those efforts. But in general,
the answer is no.
The answer is no.
And just a little bit more, add a little more depth to the India discussion as an example. The evangelism aspects, we were doing the coordination and the logistics and all of that, but it was actually an effort that was very broad, and the idea was to create a sustainable program, again at the request of the leadership of the church. The program involved, of course, evangelism, but it also involved having the workers that will come and take care of and teach the new members. It also involved establishing a church congregation and a building. And so we were involved in building.
So it was part of a longer, long-term plan rather than just preach and leave.
The preaching and so on, that got highlighted, and it was popular, and people really enjoyed it. It was there's a lot of contact with the local people, and it was really, really fun, right? And so that's why it became very much kind of like the main piece, but there's a lot of other pieces around it and in its intent. And it really helped India. India went from a country that had about 250, 300,000 members, and through this process, they ended up with over 1.2, 1.3 million. So they basically added 1 million members over a number of years, which is really a cool thing.
The other thing I really liked about that is there were a lot of partners. Mm-hmm. So when he's talking about the people on the ground helping to build the church, those were people that were involved with gospel outreach, most of them. There was some global mission interaction. There was also ASI and a lot of the church evangelism entities such as Voice of Prophecy and, just a lot of different organizations. And it was just a really neat time to be able to do something
collaborate with other ministries.
Yeah, we had 3ABN. There was Amazing Facts. We had, it is written. It was just a pretty major effort to be involved in that country. Mm-hmm.
Julie, you mentioned, we're kind of talking about the word evangelism, and I think we're talking specifically about evangelism.
Mm-hmm. As preaching and doing.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. But evangelism is very integral to what we do all the time. And we really believe in buildings being evangelism, and the process of building a church or a school is evangelism. And I think we have all seen so many times how the process of not only bringing volunteers to a location, but then a new building coming up, and a building being in a place where there may not be a lot of other buildings, that new church, we like to say the building preaches, the church preaches, because it helps to draw attention to the local congregation. Now, it's the people that are doing the sharing of the gospel, but the building is a tool that helps them do that. And so we really are involved in a special type of evangelism that we think is really effective. And it works together with all the other types. Not one type is more important than the other, but it is a very big piece of what we do every day.
And adding those water wells just added the extra.
Yeah, Kyle and I were in Zambia here not that long ago, and we were having a discussion with a number of the church leaders, and they said, there's whole area in Zambia that it's been actually very difficult for the the hope that Jesus Christ brings to be accepted. It's a very traditional African religions area. And when the water wells started going in there, it completely shifted the perspective of all the villagers. They're like, oh my goodness, this worldview, this Christian worldview cares about me as an individual, cares about my health and my time and my having to walk in danger and hours spent hauling water. And now that whole area is really exploded in terms of other needs, right? Churches and schools and so on.
Well, I actually was in Zambia a few years ago, and I had a story that is almost, it really does match exactly what you're saying. I met a woman, I think her name was Ubye, and we were in the Zambian bush, and she said, she lived a stone's throw from the church. And it wasn't a new church. We hadn't built a new church for them, but we had drilled a water well for them. And she said, I used to hear them singing all the time, and I would just see it, but I never was interested in going to church. Then she saw that we drilled a water well for them. And she said, when I saw that, it's exactly what you said, Kenneth. She told me that I know wells are expensive, but I saw, wait, this is a church that cares enough about its people and its community that they would provide this gift. And that is what got her into the church and started going. And then she started getting Bible studies, and then she was baptized. And it was just this really great reminder of kind of meeting those physical needs and creating friendships and relationships, meeting people where they are to bring them in. So yes, Kyle, definitely. I was talking about evangelism in the traditional sense of preaching from a pulpit and having huge weekly nightly meetings, but absolutely you're correct in that sense. So we're going to take a little break for there's a lot of information. So we're going to do a little thing that we like to call the rapid fire questions, but I have to say they never are rapid, but we're going to try. So I'm going to ask a question, and then we'll just go down the row. We'll start with Kenneth and then Karen and Kyle. So, all right. In the spirit of Mythbusters episode, what is the craziest myth you've heard someone say about Maranatha?
Craziest myth. Oh my goodness. There's a couple categories, but one that kind of drives me bonkers because we hear it all the time. There's a set of questions that they make the people talking to us, think there's a giant bank account that Maranatha has.
I was totally going to ask about this to Karen, but go ahead. Yeah,
sorry.
No.
That's the one that comes.
Yeah.
And the thought is, oh my goodness, you guys are here and you're planning all these projects, and there's a school and a church and 100 wells, and the numbers can escalate, right? There is no giant bank account.
Like a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow.
There's none of that. There is a lot of very, very faithful, caring people that we have to ask. And then once we've committed to doing that project, then they start supporting. It's never like we walk into a place and ta-da, we have $1 billion sitting in the bank. And I think that's actually, for me, I'll speak personally, it's very healthy for me because I think I have to have a lot more faith to take on the projects when I don't know that there is a giant bank account there.
Hey, this is question 1 on rapid fire, and we're just going to destroy that word rapid. Let me just ask you, why does that make you bonkers? Why does that make you bonkers?
Well, I think it's because there is an assumption made that all the help that somebody comes and there's almost an assumption that all Americans are rich and they're coming to this country, and there's an assumption.
Oh, so you're talking even about people overseas, not even fellow Americans.
It is from all. It's a type of question that we get all the time.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So that's it.
Karen, what's craziest myth you've ever heard?
So when we go to do Maranatha Sabbaths at different churches around the country, or if we're at like ASI convention, people come up and say, so what's your next project? And we always have to stop and just kind of, think about that for a second, wondering where they're coming from. Because there's so many projects going on all the time. And I think that people sometimes think that we focus on one big one every year. And some of that could come from the early years when I say like
when that was the case,
1990s,
yes.
where we focused on a country.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're working anywhere from 8 to 10 countries. And a lot of those have volunteer opportunities. So it's not just one project, but it's multiple opportunities, all the time. So generally we'll say, well, tell us what you have in mind, or, are you wanting to go a particular place or whatever. But anyway, just interesting.
How about you, Kyle?
Well, I think that is related to what Kenneth said from a financial perspective. Oftentimes people will assume or will want to know, like, okay, who really is funding all of this? And they're thinking that it's a small group of people or
one person or something.
And Maranatha gets funding from a lot of different individuals and a lot of different families and people, and some of them give more than others. And there are some people that give some large amounts from time to time. But like Kenneth said, it really is a cooperative effort from a lot of people. And there's a lot of gifts coming in that are $100 a month or $50 a month or $10 a month.
That's a plug for the $10 church.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of people that work together to make this happen. And that's really a neat thing.
How about you, Julie? What's your craziest?
Oh, that we're ADRA. That we're the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's fun. We love ADRA, but we're different.
The other crazy one that comes up all the time, and it shouldn't, but it still does, is like, are there going to be bathrooms? Will there be toilets on this project? It's like, really? People are still asking that,
Still asking that. I mean, was there a time when that was an issue?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, next episode. Tune in. No. Okay, so this is kind of related, but what is something that you really wish people did know about Maranatha? If you had to, is it the same question that I just asked, or I'm going to just say, what is something you wished, a factoid that you wish everybody knew about Maranatha?
For me, I guess I see it as a different question. I think I would love if people truly joined us in the belief that this is a faith ministry, and we're really honestly trying to follow God's leading and helping the church. So, like, we will be very confident and give you answers, but it only way that this organization works, because of the tens of millions of little independent decisions that have to come together for a project to work, is through prayer. It's through a relationship with God. And I would love it if people knew that and they saw that through us and they joined us in it, because it impacts them as well when they go on a project.
How about you, Karen? Favorite factoid or something you want people to know?
So most of us have been here for several years, and I just from
decades.
I know, I was on several. Try decades.
Yeah. I just, over the years, I have asked myself, how can I get more people involved in Maranatha? And I've often wondered what keeps people from wanting to make the plunge, to get involved with Maranatha. Because once they do, they generally are in it for life. It's just that much fun. And I just think that if people would give it a try, that it would be so life-changing for them. They would never go back. They would never say, oh, I want to go on another one. I mean, there's very few people that do that. And I just think that if people would make that commitment, even to just go on one, it would be life-changing for them.
Yeah, folks, go on
Yeah.
one. We have toilets and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Kyle, you?
So I have two.
Okay.
Yeah. So one is the construction in whatever part of the world is cheaper than it is here.
That's a good one.
And that is not the case. Steel is steel, and it's expensive, oftentimes more expensive in some of those places that we work. Construction is expensive everywhere, but construction out in very, very remote parts of the world is often more expensive. And then just the idea that people that, I forgot.
You said you had 2.
I did, but now let's say
Well,
I have one.
I thought where you were headed with that is, which is another word, would be great for people to know. You don't have to be a builder. You don't have
That's
to be
right.
into construction. You don't have to. You just have to be willing to go, because we'll train you, we'll teach you, we'll have our team be involved with you. That's not just for the building. That would be for vacation Bible school or medical or any of those outreach activities. It's just willingness to go and kind of put yourself out there. Mm-hmm.
Well, this should be a fast one. But we are responsive, so we don't do this. But if you could pick, where would you want to help? Where would you want to work next for Maranatha's mission? I didn't give you a heads up on this one, guys. So any place in particular?
Yeah, start with Kyle.
That's a dangerous one, because sometimes we find or are intrigued by a place, and we kind of really want to make it happen, and we push, and we end up making it happen, and then we go, and it just doesn't turn out, So really, I think we're all on the same page on this, is we want to be where God leads us, right? But there are some places that have been really inquiring of us for a long time, and I think that one that's actually very real, that could be a place that we could work in the not too distant future, would be Colombia, and I think that that intrigues me. But then further out from that, I think that there's parts of the world that we really haven't engaged in as much. Southeast Asia. We've worked in India, of course, but there's a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia in which there are needs, and we've had a lot of requests, but it just hasn't worked out. And I don't think that God has opened those doors yet, or those opportunities. We've been all the way through Central America. We've been through almost all of South America, the Caribbean. So there's some of those places that would be fun to go back to at some point. But I think that, that would be my answer at this point.
Anyone else? You're right. It's a little bit dangerous, because we're not trying to say commitment or anything, but
I would just ditto
yeah,
truly what Kyle said. And there's other places in Africa that ultimately, when the different divisions, ask us for other locations, there'll be some really unique places coming up, I'm sure.
Sometimes we remember places by the different types of foods. I'm doing a little switch on your topic here a little bit. I like Middle Eastern food. It would be kind of fun to do more projects there and have Middle Eastern food just for fun. I also like Indian food and so on, right? So, but it'd be kind of fun to do some projects in the Middle East. That's an area that needs a lot of water. I've often thought, hey, maybe there's a way we can help in some of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And last rapid fire question. What's your next upcoming trip?
No, you didn't just ask that.
I did just ask that. Where are you going next, Kenneth?
This week, a group of us, including you, Julie, we're headed to Brazil. It's a fun one to talk about, because Brazil is an area we've done a lot of projects. Brazil is a very active country. There's a lot of people that want to be involved in mission and service. And so we've been invited to do a program at one of the churches in the city of Rio. And we expect a lot of people to be there, a lot of young people, and they will be interested in going on some projects with Maranatha, which will be cool.
Yep. Kenneth leaves tomorrow. I leave the day after. Karen, where are you headed to next?
So Kenya, actually, at the in the middle of June, Southern Adventist University approached Maranatha asking if we would help them do an alumni trip. So this is the first one that Maranatha is doing in conjunction with them, and we're excited. So it's now open to everybody, but we do have a large number of people that are alumni, and so I'm looking forward to that. We're going to be working at the school at Kimagoro, Kenya.
Okay. And Kyle, do you have any trips planned or no?
I don't have anything on the calendar at the moment.
Oh, lucky you. You get to chill at home.
I'm focused on trying to get some construction planning underway for some of our larger projects that are just starting to get rolling. We've got a large campus project that we're getting started on for Dominican Republic, and so that will keep me busy here for a little bit.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. That'll be a great project in the future for us. Maranatha.
And that concludes yet another failure of our rapid fire question section. So we might have to change the name of it at some point.
When it comes to the mission of Maranatha, there is more than one way to get involved. You can jump right in with both feet by going on a mission trip. You can organize your own with Maranatha's help, or join a project that we've already organized. There are no limitations, and anyone can serve. You can choose to give by making a donation to parts of the mission that inspire you most. From projects in specific countries to programs like Water, the $10 Church, or the One Day Church, every dollar you give goes where you want to help. As a self-supporting organization, Maranatha's work relies on the generosity of all our donors to operate. Keep up to date with all the good that is taking place around the world by subscribing to our emails and our magazine. Or watch Maranatha Mission Stories, our weekly television program, and any of the hundreds of videos on our website and Maranatha Channel app. Follow us day to day on our social media accounts and watch short videos or browse photos straight from the mission field. Most importantly, you can pray. Pray for the safe travel of our team around the world, the volunteers, the donors who give so fully to those in need. Pray for wisdom as we aim to transform lives in the field and right here at home. And pray for faith, love, and support for this work, this mission, for Maranatha. Jesus, come soon.
Okay, so we're going to just discuss a couple more myths before we wrap this up. But I want to ask, and I have to admit that these are kind of all Kyle area questions, but everybody can feel free to jump in. But myth is that our volunteers build everything that we do, that everything's a short-term mission trip with volunteers. True or false, Kyle?
False.
False. Okay. Next question. No, do you care to tell us then who does? Tell us the reality.
Yeah, so the volunteers are usually involved in a piece of the process that's really conducive to their involvement. And often that's laying blocks. But there's a lot that has to happen before that to make sure that it's successful. And then there's a lot that needs to happen after that. And so we have crews of workers that are in country that help to make sure that project gets ready for the volunteers and that it gets finished after the volunteers leave, because nothing will frustrate us more than to hear that there's projects that have been left undone. So we do not leave, Maranatha never leaves a project unfinished, in terms of what we've committed to do. We make sure that we follow through and that we've reached that level of commitment by the time we leave. And so some of these workers have been with us for over 30 years, and they work with us within our system of construction and the way that we do things, and they're very knowledgeable, they're very good, they're very dedicated to work that is done as if we're doing the best job we can do, and they all subscribe to that philosophy.
Stellar quality.
And they're invaluable. So the workers that we have out in the field are awesome.
And there's a percentage of projects that we do that volunteers don't even touch, right? In fact, the majority of the projects that we do, is that accurate, would you say?
So when you look at a count, like a project count, you could say that that's true. If you look at dollars from a dollar perspective, it may not be. But so let's say that one-day churches that are being put up in Africa, mostly, those are usually done by local laborers and by our teams. And so we very rarely have volunteers helping to build one-day churches. They do a little bit, but so then you count up all the one-day churches that we've built, and yes, there's a lot of them that have been built with local labor. But some of the big campuses that we build, a lot of the block construction that we do, we try to involve volunteers in that as much as possible. And so, but they'll do a piece of it. They don't do the whole thing. And so the rest of it, the beginning and the end, and sometimes a little bit of help during the middle from our teams, they're very integrally involved in that.
which is also why during COVID, when there was a shutdown, we actually were able to keep working around the world because our crews were there and they were able to safely move about and continue the construction. It didn't shut down just because volunteers couldn't go there.
Yeah, it was interesting because in a lot of places, even they had to shelter or they had to not really move around a lot, but we were working, we had some campuses going in which the teams worked, they lived there, and there weren't that many other people there, so they weren't exposed to other people. They were just building.
They were just kind of camped out
Yeah,
there.
and we were able to keep materials flowing, and so that worked okay. They just kept building, so we were able to be pretty productive during that period of time.
Related to another myth that we hear is that, well, if volunteers are building it, it must be bad work. And you touched upon that, but Karen, you had a reaction. Do you want to answer that?
I'm number one. Our crews are always present on a volunteer project. We always have somebody that is in charge of that project that knows the building, knows exactly how it needs to be built. And if something isn't right, they will kindly come and say, okay, we need to redo this. And it's actually really good. I mean, most of the volunteers that come don't say that they're perfect at this. You know, they're there, they're willing to help and do whatever they can, and they're willing to learn how to do it. But we do have people that are making sure that the quality is good. And I think that in general, volunteers, board, everybody is very, very pleased with the quality that they see of Maranatha's work around the world.
And all the buildings that come through the Maranatha system, they've been engineered, they've been checked, they've been stamped. I mean, Kyle's arena, they spend a lot of time ensuring, oh, this area has got seismic requirements that are this. Oh, this area has got hurricane requirements or tsunami requirements. So a lot of thought goes into it. Many places, when you're building right next to the water, we go through extra coats of paint to make sure that everything will last longer and it'll be, adequate and appropriate. So the quality the volunteer brings, because they care, and then the rest of the building is just how we function. So I don't know if you wanted to add more to that, Kyle. So
Yeah, no, that actually was kind of the point I had forgotten, but that was that we don't subscribe to the idea that because we're in a less developed area, we don't have to build something to the best quality. So it's done well, it's done right, and it's done to last a long time. And we've been able to see our buildings come through a number of earthquakes and other disasters, and they've come through quite well. And so we feel like that's important. We don't want buildings coming down.
Yep. So. I just talked to you about this last week, Kyle, where I was just in India, and we talked about the different kind of soil that's in a region that I was at in West Bengal, and I was asking Kyle questions about how do you factor that in, and how do you make adjustments in our design with an engineer to make sure that whatever the situation is there, whether they're prone to cyclones, earthquakes, or I don't even know what the soil is called, but some kind of soil that
expansive
soil that causes sinking and cracking. And you were talking to me about how, you look at certain cases and adjust as we have to build the best building and most lasting building possible.
Yeah.
So, okay. And maybe the last question I have here, or not question actually, is myth. And we touched upon this, but let's talk about it more. Maranatha does disaster and relief work. We are like ADRA. True or false? Go ahead. False.
Yeah,
Ding, ding,
false.
ding.
Yeah,
False.
Yeah.
There are times that Maranatha gets involved in rebuilding, but I wouldn't call it relief, because relief refers, in my opinion, to what happens right after a disaster, and we're not equipped to do that.
Yeah, we're not set up. That's not what we do. The people that do that well need to do that, and we're not. We often, right after a big disaster, we'll get asked about that.
We'll get around to phone calls.
Yes.
Phone calls,
Yeah. What are you going to
exactly.
do about this? Well, what we do is at some point, if we get a phone call or a message from church leadership that says, hey, we really would like to talk to you about how you might be able to help us rebuild after a particular disaster, we can get involved that way, and we have in the past. And that could be rebuilding. In the case of Haiti, after the earthquake in 2010, I think, we went in and built some structures to help with that. But that was a year after, I think, if I remember correctly. And
well, even here in the United States, going and doing the sheds in Paradise, that was quite a while.
That was a year.
Yeah, Paradise,
that was a year
Paradise,
after.
California. There was a huge, just devastating fire.
So we've come after. There's Dominica. We've done things in India. We did a project when a tsunami hit for housing. Dominican Republic,
Mexico.
Mexico. So in the history of the organization, there's been quite a bit of work, but not as a direct response for the
we're not going in there hours after, and I mean that's a totally different skill set.
Trying to clean up or trying to help
people,
find people or anything like that. That's not what
and
we
it
do.
doesn't mean that our hearts aren't
Yes.
really bleeding for what's going on over there, because I mean we're just glued to the news, and it's hard. It's but that we just know that's not,
and we've done it in the United States also.
Expertise,
not our wheelhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, in the U.S. we did Bass Memorial Academy, I think, after one of
Katrina.
Katrina came through. So
again later.
That was later. That
Our
was
heart
rebuilding.
goes out, right?
Yeah, I mean, buildings had come down, and so we helped rebuild, and that's a long-term process. You know, it takes a while to get to the point. We were asked to help in Hawaii, and it's been,
after the Maui fire, right?
Yeah, and it took. I mean, it was a couple years before it was even to a point where there were some details together. So it's a slow process, rebuilding.
And to just circle back to what was mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, there is or was no official entity of the church that does the work that we do, which is construction and reconstruction. But we are so grateful that there is an official entity of the church like ADRA and ACS here in the United States that does provide those that need, that does fulfill that need. And so it's they come in first, and then we can come in later if they ask us to. So, well, thank you for being on this podcast. And I think it's, when you start working at Maranatha, people always say, you're going to need about a year before you really understand everything that goes on and how Maranatha works. And it's kind of true, because it's an organization that's been around since 1969. And it's a complicated mission. And because we do a lot of things, and there's a lot of different things to understand about it. But hey, now we know that if someone new comes to work at the office, we'll just say, watch this podcast.
That's
and
right.
maybe you'll understand. It won't take a whole year.
You'll get a little bit over 100 years of experience there. You go.
This is the turn of the century. Which century? Yeah. Right. No. Well, thank you very much. If you're interested in getting involved or learning more about the mission of Maranatha and figuring out the truth about these myths yourself, be sure to visit our website at maranatha.org and check out our volunteer opportunities, watch our show Maranatha Mission Stories, or make a donation, because as you heard, we need that to operate. And that's your peek inside missions. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. So, now that you mentioned Mediterranean food, and we always film these before lunch.
Let's
look
go
for
get
some Mediterranean food. Last time it was Indian, and we were starving. And I ate probably a ton of Indian food after that podcast.